So it's back in Bratislava for this week. This is the lovely sort of old town area. There's the American Embassy, the Radisson Hotel here. Sort of pedestrian, mainly pedestrianish area, although not entirely. You've got fountains. You've got the National Theatre up that end of the street. You've got some fashionable kinds of restaurants down this end. You've got Sviatoslav in his statue over there. Not entirely sure what his role in everything was, but he looks quite important from his statue, if that's anything to go by. As you can see, this is the week that the Avatar DVD and Blu-ray just came out. I haven't seen any Blu-rays yet. I haven't seen a Blu-ray player working. I've seen Blu-ray discs and players for sale in shops, but I've not really spent much time worrying about them. At the moment you can get such fantastic resolution from normal DVDs and a normal widescreen TV, that why would you want to go an extra stage further? It's just beyond me. Unless of course you want to put on even more stuff. These are sort of your bric-a-brac stalls with little wooden Pinocchios and what have you. I say Pinocchios, actually there aren't any real Pinocchios there. They're all other things that could be like potentially Pinocchios, all on their way to becoming real frogs and rabbits. So this is the sort of thing they lay on for tourists anyway. You've got the inevitable maps, postcards, mugs, statues, plates, you name it. So they've even managed to turn a Bratislava, which to my mind is not the number one pretty city, if you like, in the world. Well, it has a certain charm to it. It's a certain the architecture. Old Carlton it used to be, did it? It's got Carlton on it, it's got Savoy written on it, it's got Radisson written on it. I think it needs to make its mind up what it's actually called, that hotel. But otherwise people will just not be able to work out for the life of them where they're supposed to be. So, Sviatoslavovo Náměstí, or Náměstí, I think it's Náměstí would be Czech. I don't pretend to be trying to learn even Slovak, just some of the main differences, like do videnia instead of nashledanou and nech sa páči, so that I know when they're trying to be polite, but other than that you're able to get by pretty much with Czech. So and of course let's remember that I work most weeks in the Czech Republic and I only come here every few months, so there's not an awful lot of reason to learn an extra language which is only going to get in the way of the Czech. It's hard enough to keep Czech, Russian and Polish separate. I used to speak Serbo-Croat a long time ago, but that's completely gone by the by. See, they also go for Thai massage in this place, a bit like in Prague. There's only one place I know of in Warsaw in the whole city that has it, so it's not much of a fashion there, but here and in the Czech Republic are quite similar to each other. Really, I sometimes have to say, I wonder why they bothered to become different countries. I don't think that, well, first of all, they weren't asked. It was a political decision, which effectively means a decision made by politicians, the effect of which is that instead of having one Prime Minister, you've got two Prime Ministers. Instead of having one President, you've got two Presidents. And instead of 15 million people paying for all their ministers of each particular role, you've now got 10 million people paying for one set and 5 million people here paying for the other set. So that's very good, isn't it, for politicians? And who in their right mind, if asked about that at a referendum, would choose that? So naturally they weren't given a referendum. Do you want to be two separate countries? seems to me to be the sort of thing that you would definitely want to ask people. Would you like to be, I mean, in this day and age, I'm not talking about the Napoleonic era when everything was done by masons, but these newfangled lodges that were becoming much more popular and their membership was blossoming at the time of Napoleon. And they really did, well, there wasn't any real particular way of asking the bulk of uneducated people at that time what they wanted. So you could say that there might have even been an element to which they did work in the public interest, although they certainly worked in their own interest as well, don't you worry. But now you just got the in crowd making decisions on behalf of everybody else, not bothering to ask them, when we have masses that are, well, I mean, they're dumbed down now, but I mean, in comparison to what they were in Napoleon's time, you know, the mass of people are more educated, and you can communicate with them much more easily. You've got the mass media, you've got the internet, you've got everything you need to be able to both find out what people want and make alternative suggestions to them and hear their feedback and communicate what you want to do with them and get their feedback on that. So really there's no need for fait accomplis to be landed on people's heads, and yet the breakup of the Czech Republic and Slovakia, the breakup of Czechoslovakia into two countries, was done, as I know, without any asking in an official way people at a ballot box, do you actually want this? Now, had Czechs and Slovaks wished to become two separate nations, the question then remains, why didn't they do the same in 1917? Why, when they separated out from the Austrian Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, at the end of the First World War, why did they end up as a joint country when presumably, had they wished to be two countries, they could have gone ahead and done that from the start? There's Sviatoslav again. I mean, they do behave to one another in a very special way within the European Union. The Czechs give the Slovaks the right to use Slovak language in the Czech Republic and vice versa. There's much more mutual qualification recognition within these two countries. The laws are kept very close together so that a person practicing a profession in one country can easily keep up with the developments in law in the other country too. All told, seems to me to be, that's Gorky Street, Gorkeho ulica. It seems to me to be sort of like still virtually one country. If you look on the internet, if you look at the way they, oh, I've gone on the red light, I'd better go back again. A little bit too late going across there. If you look on the internet and look at the way that they talk to each other, react to one another, in discussion fora and things like that, you see that they treat one another as if they were basically from the same gang. So it's not like really a foreign country at all. Coming down in the train this morning from Prague, the Czech guards did get off at Bratislava and new guards got on at Kuti, but that's probably just habit from when it was actually two separate zones as far as customs and border control were concerned. They had to have them. Everybody got into that habit back then and saw no reason really to even change it, because it was all a load of old fiction. Anyway, it's nice to have the tram just parked over the pedestrian area like that. You've got the green light. I think, if I'm not too mistaken, we have seen this before. I think that I've taken you down here before. It looks familiar, but that was in the evening. That tree is... really, I'm not sure what it is, but it's like some kind of a flowering cherry, I think. But it's so full of blossom, and it's kind of like light blue blossom. It almost looks like a jacaranda in flower. So this time I'm staying in the Devin hotel. Last time, you'll remember from my Slovakia film, I was staying in this Danube city gate, which is that thing you can see up ahead with hotel written on the side, which is just around the corner from the office. So I decided to walk it, see how far it is. In fact, it's really not far at all. So, and there's another one of those beautiful trees. How's that? I don't suppose it ever looks that good again during the year as it looks right now. So better feast your eyes on it. Let me get right up on it. How about that? That's a nice looking tree, isn't it? And then another interesting clock arrangement there. You get a lot of these kind of strange, sort of very 1950s looking clocks on buildings. I'm tempted now to not film this, because what there is here you've seen before. It may have been in the evening, but these look like bishop's hats. It may have been in the evening, but you've seen it, so why do it again? If there's anything interesting, I'll switch it back on. That blackbird is turning over that set of mouldy leaves in the hope of finding a worm, but it's not early, it's late in the evening. The sun will go down in an hour's time, and what that bird doesn't seem to realise is it's the early bird that catches the worm. So have a look at these trees, the way they kind of go up in very graceful, interesting forms up. And down all the way along this avenue. The street is called Gajova, which means like a copse, doesn't it? Guy. Probably in honour of these trees that look as though they might be out in a forest somewhere. But they're just here in the street like that here, in the middle of the city. distinctly communistic. Wonder what that is. That might be worth a quick peek. Somebody's put a sprig of holly in there. It's distinctly socialist looking statue, then a star, and then what these folk are at the bottom there, I don't know. Just have no idea how to interpret that. Anybody want to tell me what all that was about, then by all means do. I can see another surprise coming through the trees. Of the rattle of my bag going along behind me. By the way, I'm not a fan of Samsonite anymore because my glue came unstuck after only, what, 8 months? Or maybe a bit more, 9 months, 10 months of using it. But I still expect a Samsonite to go on for longer than that. Right, let's have a look at this interesting building. What on earth is it? Firstly, we see that one of these things here has been devoided of its plaster so that it's showing off its naked form. Shocking. Interesting wrought iron, almost going up to it but not quite. And kind of aquiline ending to it there. What exactly that's supposed to signify is beyond me, but nevertheless, certainly nicer than what we have here, which is a bit less ornate than that on the corner here. How about that for a chateau there behind it? That had a certain glory in the past, didn't it? Don't know what it is, but it looks quite remarkable. But that's nothing compared to this amazing piece of architecture, which definitely, I didn't expect it. I didn't, when I put the camera on, I didn't know this was here. Just goes to show the new motto of the channel is, and this says Ne narodenim, which is the unborn, to the unborn, dative plural. I don't know whether they're thinking of the unborn generally or particular unborn people, but it's to the memory, or in the memory of unborn children. And it goes on to be more specific underneath it, but I can't really read it. I think it was for, some of it's a bit faded, but for people that have been looking after their rights. There's a heart there, and other bits of plaster on this, and an interesting piece of bronze sculpture here, sort of brazen serpent crushing a small penguin, and somebody's placed a sort of love heart in front of it as an offering of their heart to this touching sculpture. Someone's left a wreath of pine cones down there, which I'm not entirely sure about. More on this side. Nim. Ne narode nim. So again, to the unborn. So they've turned this sort of thing into a shrine. The unborn with its snake squashing a penguin at the top. Or is it? It's not a penguin, is it? It's a mongoose. It's the snake beating the mongoose. Snake's got the mongoose wrapped up this time. Why and what it means, please write it into the comments if you understand this sculpture. Some sort of like circles in it, linked to one another. There's the clock. It says it's 10 to 7. Interesting inlays, if that's the right word, all over the place on this. I wonder if there's a way that I would be allowed to. I think the thing to do would be to pick that up so that it doesn't make such a noise going in, but just to get a bit more of a look at this. The Blue Church. So there you are. That's not very usual, is it? Slightly unusual. It's almost got elements of Russian Orthodoxy about it, I would say. Certainly it's very unique as far as churches that I've seen. I'm not going into the theology of the piece at all. As I've said what I think about these things in other films, and I don't want to keep on hammering on about it. But certainly as far as aesthetics are concerned, it's very interesting. And there's a certain beauty about it. I mean, you would almost associate something like that a little bit with Gaudi. Of course, it's a little bit... That's definitely, I mean, the way that the tiles work there, it's almost it's a bit Mediterranean, isn't it? There's almost Greek or Turkish around this, the blue sort of bits of ceramics and the bits of mirror there as well. And the general artwork around it. Swallows around the top flying. And there's the manse, or the Farni Doom, or whatever you'd call it, which is also done in the same style. Interesting. I expect that must be a bit of an attraction to tourists, in as much as there is a tourist industry around here at all. Certainly unique, isn't it? More of these interesting ceramic inlays into buildings. You can see on this one, covering the arches of the windows and the door. And it's very ornate. I think you can say that about it. Here's the lilac. No shortage of greenery as well in this street. Oh, this is named after Sienkiewicz. Obviously the reference to Henryk Sienkiewicz, who is the author of Quo Vadis and the trilogy of The Flood, Pan Wołodyjowski, and what was the third one? Actually it was the first one, Ogniem I Mieczem, By Sword and by Fire. Which I mean to read at some stage, the Sienkiewicz trilogy. I haven't done so yet, but will do one day. So exactly where to go. That bell is coming from somewhere in that direction. Definitely more than 7 rings. It must be ringing 19 for the hour. A mixture of the traditional and the modern. Genuinely bizarre, the fountain that sounds like somebody blowing into a balloon. That's definitely more than 19, isn't it? This place is just surreal. I wonder if that's coordinated with that. There's something else going on over there. Siren. There's a bronze, I don't know if it's bronze, copper or what, but certainly it's got its titsut for the lads, whatever it is. More nice greenery. And everything's suddenly gone off as well. The siren's finished. The fountain's finished sucking its teeth or whatever it was doing. And the bells are finished. It's over as soon as it started. This looks like the girl off Hollywood or Beverly Hills or whatever it's called, Beverly Hills 9023564965573, making suggestive shapes with her mouth. This says Piroshki with the strange accent mark over the O. It's open. Dobrý den. Jsou s masem? S masem?
Nie. Oni jsou makové, makovole tvarové a tvarohové.
Tvarohové, aha. Dobré, jedno makové a jedno tvarohové, prosím.
Zvlášť si prosíte zapalit.
Zapalit?
Zvlášť.
Aha.
Jeden sem, druhý tak.
Mhm.
Tak.
I thought she was asking me to set fire to them, but it's just pack them in separate bags. It's the euros, by the way, in there.
Nech se vám páči. 80 centov si poprosím. Menšie nemáte?
Nemám, já jsem byl jen dneska v bankomatě.
Áno.
Jen bankomata taxik. Děkuju.
A já vám děkujem.
Děkuju. Nashleduju. So, I have to see what these things are like. Sit down and eat one. It's not what I would understand by a pirozhok in Russian. Let's see what it's all about anyway. I was expecting them to be filled with something, but they're not. A little bit of cream in it. Cream cheese. Well, I would have preferred meat, but in the middle, but one takes what one gets. Here, you'll see, on its way to the main station, the tram number 13. How it gets back I don't know, because there's only one set of tram lines in the middle of this road, so presumably its return journey is on an alternative route. In any event, all the answers are on the map of Bratislava here. We see that there's an awful lot of water around here. In fact, most of it looks like its water is actually greenery. They didn't make a very big difference between the green colour and the watercolour, but where we are now is right here, next to the Osobny Przystaw, which is here. Now, this, again, it only goes the same way, which is fortunate. This is the Slovakian. It may say Slovensky, but don't let that confuse you. It means Slovakian, honestly. It doesn't mean Slovenian. It's the Slovakian National Museum. So, despite being a national museum, it's got the EU flag on it, which I thought was a bit of a pity. Nice big lamps there and a nice interesting door. The Slovak National Museum. This is the National Natural History Museum. Przyrodovednie. That's why there's a kirin, if you know Japanese, a giraffe. Kirin me softly with his song. And this here is the Osobny Przystaw, as you can read. It is the personal port. It's your own personal port for the Danube. Not the goods port, the personal port. So exactly how that works I don't know, but let's have a quick look at it, or look around it. After all, I'm here, it's good weather, nothing wrong with filming. It's not the best thing to be walking along with a Samsonite which is falling apart, but nevertheless, how often do I get to take the film? So I'll take it and then it'll be taken. Well, there's a kind of restaurant up there on the Danube, or overlooking the Danube, I take it. Whether it's a good place to eat or not, one can only conjecture. But presumably if I go down here through this car park, I'll get a look at the river itself in all its splendour. Now you can see some of the Danube, a little bit of it. There's obviously a rail bridge there going across. A couple of boats on it. And the whole thing going on further down there, there's a row of quite traditional buildings there. That's quite a nice one, isn't it, with the spikes up at the front and the old brick arrangement. That might be worth a quite closer look. Everybody wears a helmet these days for bicycling. I must admit, I've never done it. And even now when I wear a bike I still don't do it. Ride a bike I still don't do it. I did come off a couple of times in my youth, but I tended to make a mess out of my hands and elbows rather than my head. So whether the helmet is the best thing to have or whether the gloves and the elbow things are better is an open question as far as I'm concerned. But I think the best thing of all is just to, if you come off a bike, have a bit of a knock, It's not going to kill you in most cases. And in the cases where it will kill you, then I don't think that helmet's going to do an awful lot of good. So there we are, there's the personal port. And this lovely ornate again is the word, I think, for the brickwork. A certain Austrian charm, if that's not a contradiction in terms. Right, and here we have something that really goes back to what I was saying earlier. This rather large pretend block of flats here made from concrete is actually a monument that actually runs down the middle of the National Museum. But it says, and that this is a correction to what I said earlier, 1917, but of course it's 1918. 28th of October 1918 appeared the Czechoslovak Republic, a power or a country of two brotherly nations, the Czechs and the Slovaks. So there you go, there's your Czechoslovak nostalgia, and it just harks back to what I was saying earlier. When they gained their independence, they did it as brothers. Brothers grow up at the same breakfast table and Sunday lunch table, Saturday supper, watching the same episodes of Dallas of a Wednesday evening, and then in the end one brother goes one way and the other goes another. But usually, in the case of families, the brothers themselves get some say in it, rather than have it just decided by politicians interested in multiplying offices available for them to fill. Talk to anyone you like in Bratislava in Czech, they will understand, answer in Slovak, and expect you to understand, and if you speak much Czech you'll probably understand most of it and be able to fill in the rest. So what we got here then on this Danube? Well, evidently a lot of these things are used as floating restaurants, because that's precisely what's going on in there. If my eyes don't deceive me, I can see a buffet there with people helping themselves to all manner of nice things. Whether it's an open one that anybody can go and join in, or whether it's an actual event, I know not. But it says that you're not allowed to go onto the ponton without being called. Zákaz vstupu na ponton bez vyzvania. So who was calling those guys who went on the ponton, I don't know. But never mind. Looks nice, but I've got other things in mind. So there you have that famous bridge over the Danube. You can see the Danube quite nicely as well from here, with the other bridge just there behind the railway bridge. And there's that bridge that's got the UFO building on the top, which contains a cafe apparently. I didn't know that, but I read it. So if I had a mind to, I might go up there, but I don't really have a mind to, so there we are. I'd rather go and log on and see what's actually happened in politics, whether they've actually struck a deal yet or not. The Lib Dems, as they call themselves, the Liberty Demolishers, and the Conservatives. What we got here? So, interesting. Kto padnie w boji za slobodu, nie zomiera. This was a slogan of the mid-19th century amongst patriots of these new countries that were coming up. Whoever falls in a fight for freedom does not die. If you want to know more about the origins of that statement, then I suggest you read Adam Zamoyski's Holy Madness book, which is a very, very good what's the word? Really, the book just doesn't capture it, but it's a great journey into understanding the whole of the nationalist movements and the things which really shaped today that were going on in the 19th century after the end of the Vienna Congress. So Zamoyski wrote two books, one on the fatal march of Napoleon to Moscow, and then another which pretty much picks off where that one leaves, which is the Vienna book, Rights of Peace, about the Vienna Congress, or Conference, or whatever it's called. And what picks up from there, but takes a slightly different prism because it has a larger panorama of history, is the Holy Madness book. In fact, the Holy Madness book doesn't just pick up from there, it goes from earlier, from the beginnings of the American revolutions and the French revolutions, through to pretty much the end of the Paris Commune. So you've got quite a canvas there that he looks at. I think I've gone the wrong way round, the long way round, no, the wrong way, but the long way round coming back. That's obviously the Radisson, which is something we saw on the way there from the hotel, but certainly that must be the Devon just a tad further down there. So in my opinion, if you want to know the history of what happened before, or just, you know, in the century before, or the 120 years before the 20th century started, then it's difficult to do better than to read There's the Moisky books. And unlike your usual history book, which can be extremely tedious, I mean, Hobsbawm is a good historian, no doubt, but he doesn't write in a way which makes you really, you know, want to keep on reading till you finish the book. And certainly Norman Davies isn't that kind of person. He's the sort of person you might dip in here and there into one of his capsules that make it barely more readable in Europa or Europe. But I always get the impression when I'm reading Norman Davies' stuff that he's showing me how clever he is, rather than telling me a story that's going to interest me. So that's probably just my problem. Everybody else probably thinks Norman Davies is great, but well, I know that not everybody thinks Norman Davies is great, but there are a lot of people that think he's an absolute wonder boy. But that's the kind of mutual admiration arrangement between him and the Polish establishment. Right. Oh, green, an interesting noise. So the National Slovak Gallery, or Slovakian National Gallery, showing Juliusz Koller's paintings of tennis. That's in honour of Martina Navratilova. Here we have more installations. I don't know what this one means, but it's obvious there was a budget for it, because there's all sorts of funny pieces of art around here. Just goes to show somebody was very liberal with the budget for this sort of thing. Ludoit Stur, Slovenský národný buditel. Okay, so he says this is Ludovit Stur, the Slovak national wake-up man, 1815 to 1856, and two of his chums as well, probably. Right. And that's Reduta, that redoubtable building with more stucco and whatnot on it, and it's obviously a casino from the word casino that you'll see there. It's nice. So I've got my green man, which seems to be in dispute from this taxi, but never mind, he's stopped anyway. Oh look, it's Mr. John. He's coming to Košice, which is over in the east of this country. There's an interesting looking overhang. Right. I don't really have anything more to say, and I think I've shown you everything, so I'll stop. Thanks for watching. So I said I would stop, but I've decided to start again because underneath this overhang is just the front part of a lovely courtyard with trees in it going all the way around, and as you can see it's all the Slovak National Gallery, so it's not just the back bit there that's part of that, it's the whole thing. So presumably there's a lot of things in there if you should wish to visit it and have a look at modern, probably modern art mainly. Judging by what's on the posters, and that's probably something which would give you quite a run for your money to see it all. So that particular is Umienia 20 Storocha, which is art of the 20th century, so there we have it. I quite like that juniper. In fact, I quite like the way these various planters are kind of, what's the word, tessellated onto one another with the odd bit of extra rock for good measure. when you film anything, you tend to attract people's attention. That woman looked around to see what I was filming here. She may well say, yeah, I've been watching it for half an hour and I'm wondering the same thing. Interesting. I've seen that same notice earlier on, I filmed it earlier on. Štátna nivelacia. And then something Setresta. Škody or something Setresta. And I think I know what it means. My guess is that the facade of the building belongs to the state. Whether the even if the building is private, the facade still is state property, so you're up against the state itself in all its magnitude. If you want to graffitize it or whatever, then you're up against criminal prosecution rather than just having to do with some angry owner. I think that's what it means. Anyway, one thing is for sure, there's not that much graffiti around here in comparison with what you see in Prague, because in Prague it's an absolute disgrace. So here we are, Hotel Devine, for those interested. Now here I've actually got two lines, two tram lines. I hope there are, because otherwise I don't know how they're crossing each other. And the bridge over the Danube in full effect. Some nice clouds before sunset. Bearing in mind all the lovely sunsets we were promised during this ash cloud, which is now in its second wind, if you like, over France and all that lot. You're not getting all that many of these sunsets that were promised, that were supposed to be all beautiful all over the place, but maybe we'll still get some later. And just to finish, here's a nice brown tree. I'm not going to film inside the Devine this time because I did that before, so if you want to know it then you'll have to look it up.